Hello, what's up YouTube? Photographer Ronnie Sweater, and in this tutorial you're going to be learning skin retouching using frequency separation from the very start to the very end. I have seen so many of you asking me to do this kind of tutorial, and this is for you. And if at all you feel like this is always what you have always wanted to get from this channel, I request that you hit the like button on this video, and also don't forget to subscribe this channel, because this is going to help you to push and recommend this video to many people out there. So without further ado, let's get started. So what we are just going to do, we are going to be learning about frequency separation from the very start to the very end, and we're going to be using Photoshop. So I'm using Photoshop 2020, and this is the photo that we're going to be using for this very tutorial. So what you have to understand about frequency separation, it is going to be a skin retouching technique that is going to divide the image into the high frequency layer and the low frequency layer. In the high frequency layer we have our textures, and in the low frequency layer we have our colors. So we have to divide this very photo into two layers, so that when we perfect the colors and also the textures, and we refine both of them independently, and later on combine both refined layers, we are going to be ending up with a nicely retouched image at the end of it all. So we're just going to come to this very image, and the very first thing I tend to do before doing any retouching is cropping the image. So you have to also first of all take into consideration the purpose of your image or what you intend to use your photo at the end of the retouching process. So mine is for posting on social media, so I've just come and crop the image by coming the crop tool and simply coming and cropping the image in a ratio of 45 or 8:10. So after this, I'll just left click and drag the corners until I get the most or the right crop ratio right there, and I just simply click on enter to approve my crop settings. So right now, like I said, we're just going to be dividing the image into two layers by coming to the background layer and simply pressing Ctrl J or Command J twice, or you can simply drag the background layer to this new layer icon. You left click and drag to this new layer icon, and you create those two layers. So I'm just going to double click right here, and I'll name this to low frequency, and you're going to name this to high frequency right there. So after we have done this, the next thing we are going to do, we are just going to come and make sure the high frequency layer is going to contain the textures, and the low frequency layer is going to be containing our colors or skin tones. So in order to achieve that, we're just going to come to this icon, simply left click on it to hide the high frequency layer, and simply come to the low frequency layer. Now select it. So after selecting the low frequency layer, we're just going to come to filter. Remember, we only want to remain with only and only the colors in the low frequency layers. Just come to filter, then we're going to come to blur and come to Gaussian blur. So this is the most important step when it comes to retouching using frequency separation. So this step is going to determine the amount of skin texture that you want to remain with in your final or retouched image at the end of the process. So you can see that we have the Gaussian blur dialog window right here. So what we want to do basically, we're just going to come and simply use the zoom in and the zoom out option. So simply click on it, and we are going to look for an area that has prominent skin textures than the rest of the skin. So by taking the radius all the way down, you can see the image is now looking sharp in this dialog box. So you have to look for an area that seems to have more skin texture than the rest of the image. So what we want to do, we're just going to simply left click on the radius option, or this hand right here. You left click and hold down and start dragging up the radius. So the purposes of this is because we want to eliminate the textures that are now visible in this case. So simply click on this and drag it up towards the right hand side, up to a point when you just starting to close out completely on the skin textures. You can as well zoom out and look. You click and hover around the image. So just going to be looking for those, I think 7 is the right spot. So you have to move it up to a point when you're just starting to close out on the skin textures in the image, but you can as well visibly notice the other facial structures in this case. So after you have done this, so your image may be or may require another radius value of the pixels than mine. So you shouldn't cram the radius I've used. Always use a radius depending on the amount of texture or detail embedded within the image. Remember, different photos are going to be taken using different sensors or cameras with a varying megapixel count. So for mine it is 7.0. So if at all you misuse or you put a wrong radius, it means your details may also be lost at the end of the retouching process. So you have to be careful with this first step. So mine is 7.0. I'm just going to simply click on OK, and that is going to make the image look a little bit blurry. So you can notice that the image is now looking blurry if at all I zoom in by pressing Ctrl Command plus. So after I've done this, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to come to the high frequency layer and simply select it. And remember, in the high frequency layer, we only want to remain with our textures or the details. So just come and select it and now activate it by turning it on or clicking on this visibility icon that we had initially deactivated. And after doing this, just come to image and you're going to come to apply image. So when you come to apply image, it is going to open up the apply image dialog box right here, and under source we have the name of the image and the layer. So from the layer from which you're going to be subtracting or extracting the textures is going to be the layer below, which is the low frequency layer. Simply come, left click and select low frequency. So after doing this, just come to the channel and make sure the channel is RGB. So you can see that I have 16, meaning my image is going to be a 16-bit image. So for a 16-bit image, when it comes to the blending option, for a 16-bit image, simply come and change it to add, and make sure the opacity is 100%, preserve transparency and mask cannot check. The scale is 2 and offset 0, and simply come and turn on the invert option, and always make sure the preview is also turned on. So after you have done this, the next thing that we want to do, you can come and simply click OK if at all you're working on a 16-bit image. But if at all you have 8 right here, meaning your image is going to be an 8-bit image, simply come and simply select the low frequency layer. The channel has to be RGB. The blend mode for an 8-bit image is subtract, and make sure the invert option is not turned on, and the scale is 2 and offset 128, opacity at 100%, preserve transparency and mask cannot check. You can see right now the textures are on the gray kind of layer. So the next thing that we want to do, or the next thing that we would love to do, is simply coming and clicking OK if at all I was to be working on an 8-bit image. But mine is a 16-bit image, so I simply change the blend mode to add, turn on the invert, scale is 2, offset 0, and simply click on OK. So after that, we want a blend mode that is going to bring back our initial or original image. So the blend mode is going to be linearize. So just come to the blend mode option right here, left click and drop down, and simply come and change it from normal and simply click on linear light, and you'll get back the image the way it was meant to be. So after we have done this, you can notice that if at all we turn off these layers, we only have textures in this upper layer, and if at all I only turn on this layer, you can see that it is lacking the details and it is only having colors. So we have separated the frequencies of the image, and there is no difference between the original image and our separated layers. So if I told them to group these two layers by left clicking and selecting both layers, by holding down the Ctrl or Command key and selecting both layers and dragging them into a folder icon to put them in a group, and I double click to name that to frequency separation. If at all I turn this on and off, you can see there is no difference between the original image and our separated image. So it is basically the same image, meaning we have successfully separated the frequencies of this very image. So I'm just going to leave the background layer turned on and simply left click to drop down. So after this, I'm just going to come, and first of all, we are going to be working on the layers independently. So for this case, I'm just going to first of all work on the skin tones or skin color of the model. And in order to work on the skin tones, always make sure you're looking at a given aspect at one time. So I'm just going to come to the high frequency layer and simply hide it so that I can only see the colors in the image and I'm not distracted by the textures. And come and simply left click to select the low frequency layer. And with this, we're going to be using a tool known as the mixer brush tool. So what the mixer brush tool is going to do, it is going to help us mix or blend the uneven skin tone transitions within the model's skin. So just going to come under the brushes, simply right click, select the brushes option, right click and come and select the mixer brush tool for newer versions of Photoshop. And if at all you have a slightly older version of Photoshop, you may find your mixer brush tool down here by simply right clicking here and locating or finding your mixer brush tool. So after you have done this, the next thing I'm going to do, you're just going to come right here and you're going to drop down and make sure we set the mixer brush tool. Remember, this brush has enable us blend the skin, but remember we have to first of all set it. So just going to come right here and make sure the hardness is at 0% and make sure clean brush is also selected. So we have two options right here. One is saying load the brush after each stroke, and the second one is the opposite, which is clean the brush after each and every stroke. So basically what this is going to do, if I told you select this option, it means as you're painting, your brush is going to be carrying color from a previous area and taking it to the next area that you're going to be working on, which we don't want. Remember, when you're working on skin color or skin tones, there are varying levels or different levels of skin tones or skin color, and we wouldn't want to distort that in any way. So we just want the brush to be clean and not carry color from one area to another. Remember, we have selected clean the brush after each and every stroke. The weight we're going to be using is 9% because we don't want the brush to spill color from one area to another. And the load is 75%. The mix at 90 and the flow of 100%. Remember, you may find different options or different teachers or people that make tutorials on YouTube showing you different settings. So you have to keep on trying and using and finding the best and sweetest settings for your mixer brush tool. So mine, I prefer a weight of 9%, load of 75, mix at 90 and the flow of 100%. Make sure sample all layers is not checked. So make sure that this option is not checked, because when you check this option, and for example, if at all your layer is turned on with the texture, it means that the brush is going to be carrying information from all these layers. And when you start painting using the mixer brush tool, for example, if at all I start painting, you can notice that the brush is also painting back textures within the image and creating that kind of black effect within the photo itself. So that is the disadvantage of turning on this option. So make sure you reset by pressing Ctrl Command Z on the keyboard to undo. So make sure sample all layers is not checked, and simply come to the high frequency and now hide it by clicking on the visibility icon or this eyeball icon. So with the low frequency layer selected, we are now going to start working on the image. Then also, if I told you mixer brush tool is showing this kind of plus icon, simply press the caps lock key to bring back the circular icon for the brush tool. Then also, as you're working on the image, you're going to be increasing or decreasing on the size of our mixer brush tool. So if at all you want to increase on the size of the mixer brush tool, you can use the right box bracket on the keyboard, and the left box bracket is going to be doing the opposite or the reverse, which is reducing the size. So depending on the area we are working on the skin, we may have to play around with varying sizes of the mixer brush tool. So after you have done this, we are just going to be working on the image. And how to use the mixer brush tool, make sure you retouch at a distance and you don't zoom all the way in. Remember, I'm zooming in by using Ctrl plus on the keyboard, or if at all you're using Mac, you can use Command plus on the keyboard to zoom in, and Command minus or Ctrl minus is going to zoom out. So make sure you retouch at a distance, because you don't want to distort, or you want to visibly see the uneven skin tone transitions. So after doing this, how do you apply the mixer brush tool? You simply have to left click and hold down on your mouse and hold down or on your touch or trackpad. So when you hold down, simply drag the mixer brush tool in a given direction so that you can mix that color alone. So let me just try to do that. So you hold down, left click and hold down, and simply move or mix those colors that are looking alike to create an evenness within or between those colors. So you can see I've just painted on this area, and you can see that now the skin looks more even. So I'll just come to this other area and simply come and mix this area so that it is very nice or even. So when it comes to where the area is transitioning from one area to another, just come and mix that area so that you can create a nice and smooth transition. So make sure you mix colors that are looking alike, and you maintain or you keep moving the strokes of your mixer brush tool in the direction or the shape of that given area. So for example, if I told you to see a progress on the forehead area of our model right here, by turning on the texture layer and simply turning on and off the overall frequency separation group, you can see now the skin looks even, or skin tones look more even. So we're just going to turn off the high frequency layer, and with the low frequency layer still selected, continue mixing or blending. You can see on the cheekbone I'm moving the strokes of the mixer brush tool, and I'm not using a very big size for my mixer brush tool. I'm using a relatively small area or small mixer brush tool because I want to be precise with my blending option using the mixer brush tool. So I'm basically left clicking and holding down and moving or dragging the mixer brush tool in the direction of an area so that I can maintain the original shape of the model's face. So you can see that this looks okay. Reduce on the size, and I work on a relatively smaller area. So when it comes to the nose area, you have to move the mixer brush tool in an up down kind of direction and mix these dark tones alone, just like this, and also mix this other side by moving the brush in that direction. So when it comes to the highlight, just mix that highlight alone, and you can see it is creating a very nice or even transition within the colors that were existing on the nose of our model. So just come and work on this, and like I said, always retouch at a distance, because that is going to help you rather retouch better or even faster within a short period of time. So come to the neck area and also mix these colors just like that, and this area. So you can see the hand has this highlight, so just come and work on the highlight. Come and increase and work on these other midtones right here on the arm, and you can see this is going to create an even or seamless transition within the skin tones or skin color. So I'm just going to reduce on the size by using the left box bracket on the keyboard and work on these other dark tones, highlight alone, and where it is transitioning from the highlight to the midtones, I'll just mix that area too. So you can see that this looks great, it looks better. So I'm just going to be working on these other areas. So you can see that the mixer brush tool is a very powerful tool for your skin retouching. So I'm just going to be working on these areas. So I'm basically left clicking and holding down on the cursor or the trackpad or even the mouse and dragging this brush in the direction that I want to mix. So you keep on releasing, you don't drag it from one area to another, you keep on releasing and mixing another area. So you hold down, release like that. So you can now come and turn on the texture layer and zoom out and look at your image or the work you have done using the mixer brush tool. So this is the before after. Just look at how amazing the image has turned out to be. So after we have used the mixer brush tool, the other technique or the other tool that I prefer to use is using the lasso tool. So basically what does it helps me refine the areas I may have missed out when I was using the mixer brush tool. Remember, sometimes you tend to skip some areas. So I'll just come to the lasso tool and make sure it is in new selection mode. Make sure the first tool is selected. The reason for this is because as you're making selections on the skin, you don't want to go through all the process of deselecting a given selection that we make. And now the feather is 22 pixels. The reason for this is because as we make a selection, we don't want a harsh edge or outline from a given selection. That is why the feather is all the way up to 22, because when you leave it at around 0, it means the edges are going to be sharp. So the lower the feather, the sharper the edges, and the higher the feather number, the smoother the edges of a selection. So I'm just going to zoom in by using Ctrl or Command plus on the keyboard, and this time around come back and make a selection on the skin by holding down or left clicking and holding down and moving my mouse or trackpad to a direction, and I follow that given shape. So after I've done this, simply come to filter, come to blur, and come down to Gaussian blur. So when you come to Gaussian blur, it is going to load the previous frequency separation radius that you had when you're separating the frequencies of your photo or your image. So after it has done that, just come to the radius and simply left click and hold down and drag the radius as you're looking at the skin texture, and drag it up to a point when you feel like you're getting the best out of the skin texture that looks better or natural and highly realistic. So around 20, that is when I have a very nice texture. Alternatively, you can as well, with the radius that you had previously, you can multiply that radius by 3, because I've tried and tested this. So multiply 7 by 3, so whichever radius. So for example, if I told you used 5, multiply 5 by 3 and type in that value. So for my case, I used 7. So 7 by 3 is 21. I'll just put in 21, and you can see the texture looks very nice and better. So just come and click on OK. So remember what I told you about this mode. To deselect this area, simply come and make a new selection, and it is going to automatically deselect the previous selection. So right click and come to Gaussian blur, and come to this other area. You can see I'm following the way the face is shaped. Right click and come to Gaussian blur. So just come and fine tune. Right click and come to Gaussian blur right there, and come this other side, follow the way the face is shaped. Right click and come to Gaussian blur, and we're going to come to this other area, the chin area, and I'm just going to continue working on this chin area. Right click and come to Gaussian blur, and come to the nose area. So when it comes to the nose area, I see most people make this mistake rather. So when it comes to the nose area, don't apply or select the whole nose. Just come and apply it on the shadow area of the nose. Right click and come and apply the Gaussian blur, and come this other side of the nose, make a selection, follow the way the nose is shaped. Right click and come to Gaussian blur. So when you feel like the effect is too much, you can simply right click on a given selection and come to fade Gaussian blur and simply reduce on the effect or fade it out. So I'm just going to be doing this. So you can see when it comes to the highlight area, just come and apply your Gaussian blur if at all you wish to. Right click and come and apply the Gaussian blur. Or you can as well, after applying it, remember it is going to flatten or make the nose big or look big. So right click on the selection, come to fade Gaussian blur, and simply reduce on the opacity of that so that the nose can keep its original shape. So right now I'm done doing all this, and I can deselect that area. So I usually apply the lasso tool technique on only the face of a model. So right now I'm done working on the skin color or skin tones of the model. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to come and remove the blemishes or skin imperfections that are part of the textures. You can see that we have some pimples, and we just want to clean those up. So I'll just come to the high frequency layer. Remember, blemishes are part of textures on the skin. So after selecting the high frequency layer, I'm just going to come and select the clone stamp tool and make sure I set it right. So in order to use this, I'm going to be using the hardness. Remember, the settings for a given tool are always on the top part of your screen. So mine is a clone stamp tool, hardness at 0, and the mode is normal, opacity at 100%, the flow is 100%. I make sure aligned is also selected, and the sample has to be current layer. The reason for this is because we only want to work with the information in the high frequency layer, which is the currently selected layer. So make sure you select current layer. So how to use the clone stamp tool, make sure you zoom all the way in, and how to remove a given blemish. For example, if at all I wanted to remove this blemish right here, simply hold down the alternate key on the keyboard if at all you're using Windows. Then if at all you're using Mac, you can hold down the option key on the keyboard. So hold it down and simply left click. So by this I mean you hold down the alternate or option key on the keyboard, option for Mac, alternate for Windows. You hold down that button and make sure the cursor or the tool is on a clean area that is near the blemish. So when you hold that down, simply left click once and release the alternate key on the keyboard or the option key, and simply left click over the blemish, and that is going to eliminate the blemish. So I'm just going to be doing this for the blemishes that are existing on the model skin. You can now use Command minus to zoom out. So you have to keep on doing this to try and clean up or eliminate the blemishes that are existing on the model's face or the model's skin. So you can see that this really does a pretty nice and perfect job and doesn't leave behind those patches from the removed areas or the cleaned areas that we have, or from which we have eliminated the blemishes. So you can keep on following that same procedure, and if at all you're lost, you can simply rewind and follow the right steps or procedures for using the clone stamp tool. So I'm just going to be removing these blemishes, and always make sure you remove or clean up most of the blemishes. Remember, this is retouching for beauty photography, and we don't want to leave blemishes behind. So I'm just going to increase on the size. You can increase the size or decrease on the size of your clone stamp tool by using the open and close brackets on the keyboard. So I'm just going to be cleaning these up, and within a short period of time, you're going to be done cleaning up or removing the skin imperfections or the blemishes from the model's skin. So by using Control Command minus, you can now zoom out and look at the image from a distance and look for those blemishes that you may not have removed from the image. So right now we are done removing or cleaning up the blemishes from the model's skin. So let's look at a quick before and after for the overall skin retouching process. So this is the image before, after. So the next thing that we want to do is adding a little bit of dodging and burning. So dodging and burning is more of enhancing the highlights and the shadows in a given image. Remember, as you're retouching, sometimes we tend to go overboard and we lose out on the natural or original shape of the model's face. So you just want to add or bring back the original details in the model's face by using dodging and burning. So just going to come to the curves adjustment layer. So just come to adjustments and simply come to curves. So dodging and burning is more of enhancing the highlights and the shadows in a given image. So I've come to the curves adjustment layer and simply click in the middle and simply drag up. So you click and hold down and drag up to brighten up the image slightly, and make sure the white layer mask is selected and simply press Ctrl or Command I on the keyboard to invert that effect. So remember, we have just brightened. So dodging is for the highlights and burning is for the shadows. So just going to name that to dodge, and you're going to come up back and do the same for the darker areas by coming back to the curves and clicking in the middle and dragging down to darken the image slightly. And with this white layer mask selected, press Ctrl Command I to invert or hide that effect, and we're going to name that to burn. So after you have done this, you're going to select both layers and press Ctrl or Command G on the keyboard, put these in a group, and we're going to name this group to dodge and burn. So you can see there is no difference on the image. So we want to apply our dodging and burning effect on the model's highlights and the shadows. So just come and open up your dodge and burn group, and now we're going to first of all work on the darkest areas by simply selecting the black layer mask. So make sure the black layer mask is selected and simply come to the brushes, right click and get the normal brush tool. So this time around we're using the normal brush tool. And after we have done this, the next thing we're going to do, we're just going to come the settings and make sure the hardness is always at 0, and make sure it is a soft round brush, and the mode is normal, opacity at 100%. You're just going to be using an opacity of around 10% rather, a flow of 100%, smoothing at 0. With this selected, make sure you have black and white on these color swatches. So you can reset by left clicking on the tiny boxes, or you can switch between black and white by using X on the keyboard. So with this done, you can now zoom in slightly, and with the burn layer mask selected, you can now increase on the size of our brush and simply paint on the dark areas of the model's face. Just paint slightly, don't overdo this. So painting once is okay. If at all you feel like the intensity is much, you can reduce on the opacity rather. So just come to the nose area and simply paint on this side of the nose. So you can just come and paint on the cheekbone, to enhance that. So you can now come to the dodge layer and simply enhance the brightest areas, for example on the cheekbone right here, and also come this other side. Come to the nose highlight and enhance that. On the chin area also enhance that. Even on the forehead area you can also enhance that. So if at all you do a mistake, you can switch back to black, and black is going to rub away the effect. So when you're done doing this, you can now close your dodger and band group, and you can see before and after. It has now added shape or dimension to the model's face. So next thing that we want to do is doing a little bit of eye whitening, or if at all you prefer, you can do teeth whitening. So I can simply come to my adjustments and simply come to the hue and saturation adjustment layer. So what this is going to do, we're just going now to desaturate the image up to around negative 75. And with this done, remember it has eliminated the other random colors like the yellow color from the eyes, and now the eyes look white, but it has also affected the overall image. Simply come to the hue and saturation adjustment layer, or the layer mask right here, and simply press Ctrl or Command I on the keyboard to invert that effect. So just come to the brush tool and make sure the opacity is 100%, flat 100%. Make sure you have white as the foreground color, or you can use X on the keyboard, switch between black and white, or you can use this arrow key. So after we have done that, remember in Photoshop, white is going to reveal and black is going to hide. That is why it has hidden the effect from affecting the overall image. You can now zoom in and simply reduce on the size of your brush by using the bracket key on the keyboard, the left bracket key. And with that done, simply come and paint on the white area of the eye. And that is going to basically naturally whiten the eye, and it is not going to make it look blue like most photos I see on the internet. So it is more of a better and natural way to do the eye whitening. So right now we are done doing the eye whitening. So you don't have to paint on this corner of the eye because that is meant to have color. So don't paint in that area. So right now we are done doing the eye whitening, and let's see the overall before and after for the retouching process. So this is the image before after, and it looks very natural and highly realistic and looks beautiful. So after we have done this, the next thing is going to be saving the image, or saving a very sharp image after retouching, and you don't want the image to change in color after you have been able to post or print it out. So just come to File and come to Export and come down to Export As. So when you come to Export As, it is going to open up an Export As window right here, and this is what you have to put it or put in the settings when the image has loaded in the preview of the Export As window. So the image is going to load and appear right here depending on how fast your computer is. So the format is JPEG, and I prefer a quality at 100%. So you can change the format by clicking the drop down icon. So resample I prefer by cubic sharper because I want Photoshop to slightly add some sharpening for my photo. So make sure the color space is convert to sRGB, and also embed the color profile because we don't want the image to change in color when we print it out or when we post it on social media. So make sure you check on these two icons, and after you have done that, you can simply, when the image is done loading right here, simply come and click on the Export As or the Export window or option right here, and look for an area where you want to save your image and simply save it in that given location. So this is it for this tutorial, and if at all you have loved it, don't forget to like this video and don't forget to subscribe this channel. If at all you have been watching and you're not subscribed yet to this channel, Ronix from Ronix Photography, thank you for watching, and see you yet more amazing tutorials on this channel. Don't forget to keep practicing and also keep creating.